A Good Swiss Watch. Queer Coding, Slashy Subtext, and Why Queerbaiting Doesn't Exist. Part 1. Queerbaiting. In 2012, the term queerbaiting sprang, fully formed, from the brow of Tumblr fandom. By 2019, the term is everywhere, accepted as a fact of life. But is this the right way to look at the continued problems with queer representation in media? I believe that the real issue is not queerbaiting, that is, the intentional deployment of queer subtext for the primary purpose of attracting queer viewers, but rather the gap between how most of mainstream Hollywood reads subtext and how many fans do. That gap leads to expectations that are never fulfilled. Okay, so what is queerbaiting? According to Wikipedia, queerbaiting is a marketing technique for fiction and entertainment in which creators hint at but then do not actually depict same-sex romance. They do so to attract, bait, a queer audience with the suggestion of relationships that appeal to them, while at the same time attempting to avoid alienating other consumers. That page was originally written in 2014. But where did the term come from? Back in the 1920s, terms like red baiting and race baiting were used in political discourse. Over the course of the 20th century, analogs like gender baiting and queer baiting were added. All of these terms mean something like using divisive language about a particular group to try to start shit. In some cases, it's to stir up bigoted voters. In some cases, it's to start an in-person fight. This use of queerbaiting shows up in the 1960s and is still sometimes seen today, along with the more common gay baiting. By the 90s, it turned up regularly in discussions of gay bashing. The 90s also saw a lot of use of the noun queerbait, used affectionately to refer to someone who was catnip to queer people, and not so affectionately by the kind of teenagers who thought gay was an insult. Plenty of other bait terms were common in the 90s and 2000s, including slash bait for media, scenes, and characters that are catnip to slashers, and ship bait, usually used only for specific moments that support a particular ship. Other terms like ship tease and fan service were also common. Fans talked about the subtext that drew them to a show, and sometimes talked about the powers that be putting in subtext intentionally, but the sense was often that this was a welcome bonus, not a cop-out. By 2010, fans were getting cranky. The likes of Rizzoli and Isles got more comments about bait and switch than slash bait. Put those two terms in the blender with the old sense of queerbaiting, and you can see how the new word could have been coined independently by many fans and understood instantly by all. In early 2012, a few mentions of queerbaiting in the new sense cropped up on Tumblr and bled over to LiveJournal, but many posts complaining about this kind of content didn't use a specific term. On March 28th, Tumblr user Still Sophie Story posted a now famous piece of fan art on the phenomenon. This art is as much a criticism of fans as of media. Still Sophie Story commented in a post 2 days later, "What aggravates me is when canons deliberately queerbait, flirting with homoerotic tension and then laughing about it, going no homo, when they ruthlessly exploit the popularity factor of slashiness without ever allowing their central bro TP to really actually just for once be textually gay. And when fandom lauds that as progressive and queer-friendly." The post instantly went viral and inspired plenty of responses, but I can't find a single use of the term queerbaiting in any early reblogs. Fans were discussing the topic, but most of them didn't have a word for it yet. By May, Twitter was complaining about queerbaiting in Sherlock. That discussion was often about Irene Adler, the lesbian with a crush on Sherlock, or the homophobic mistaken for gay jokes, rather than about endgame Johnlock or lack thereof. And then, on July 12th, 2012, this was posted.
"We're on a ship. Pun intended."
Whoa. Hey, man.
Hey, buddy.
Oh, hey, guys.
Oh, hey, guys.
Whoa, there's like a whole bunch of people right there.
Yeah, look. Didn't see the audience. We should.
Oh, we were supposed to tell them something.
We want to ask if you guys could vote for Teen Wolf with the Teen Choice Awards for the
Choice Summer Show, right?
Best Choice Summer Show.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you please do it? Because if you do,
We'll take
that's all that needs to be said.
Okay, I take it back. Sometimes queerbaiting is a real thing. This crap right here, queerbaiting. Tumblr exploded with discussion, and the term, which had gradually crept into fanish consciousness over the last few months, exploded too. In August, Entertainment Weekly denied Steric a spot on its shipping poll. In September, after Elton countered with its Ultimate Slash Madness tourney. The following month, after Elton interviewed Jeff Davis, creator of Teen Wolf, at New York Comic Con and asked about Steric. In a long-deleted video, he reportedly said, "If I say one way or another, I'll get fan hate on both sides of that question. If I don't say anything, I get accused of queerbaiting." Finally, in December 2012, Slashcast, a popular fandom podcast, published its episode on breaking the fourth wall. Queerbaiting was mentioned prominently in the show blurb and discussed in the episode. At this point, the term had spread far and wide within Fanworks fandom and beyond. Teen Wolf is the prototypical example, and the one that truly popularized the term. It's obvious looking back at interviews and at the show itself that Davis never had any intention of having Styles and Derek hook up. But unlike Sherlock, where the creators were upfront about not planning on Johnlock, Teen Wolf overtly catered to a set of fans and even asked for a specific favor in exchange for the ship. It's clearly a joke. I doubt either Davis or O'Brien thought it would be taken 8,000% seriously by the fandom, but it was. My big objection to the term queerbaiting is that I don't think that most big media is actually catering to us, whether this us is a broad queer audience from all parts of the queer community, or whether this us is Slash fandom. Most of the time, I think that shows are being written by clueless guys who genuinely don't see the subtext how we do, and this includes most of the cis gay men working in big media. There's plenty to criticize, but I don't think queerbaiting is the right way to look at it. So what's going on instead? Part 2. Battle of the subtexts. There are two major types of subtext that get called homoerotic. One is queer coding. The other is slashy subtext. They can occur together, and plenty of people like both, but they are very different beasts. Queer coding is when a character displays traits that are associated with queer people without that character being canonically overtly queer. These traits range from offensive stereotypes to subculture markers that a fellow queer person of the era might recognize. A lot of queer coding is about getting shit past the censors, but a lot of it is also about regurgitating camp villain tropes without realizing that they are queer stereotypes at all. My favorite example of getting shit past the censors is, hands down, the famous Swiss watch scene from Red River.
It's a good-looking gun you were about to use back there. Can I see it? Maybe you'd like to see mine. Nice, awful nice. You know, there are only two things more beautiful than a good gun. A Swiss watch or a woman from anywhere. You ever had a good Swiss watch?
Another famous example is the use of the word gunsel in The Maltese Falcon, which has about as much to do with guns as that Red River scene. Did the filmmakers know what it meant when they adapted the book? Later noir copycats certainly don't. They use it to mean gunman, whereas in fact it's a slang term that basically means rent boy. Of course, the queer-coded character in the film is actually an entirely different villain.
Gardenia.
Joel Cairo, with his gardenia-scented calling cards and effete manners, is a classic queer-coded villain. Disney loves these too, most obviously Ursula, who was based on the drag queen Divine. Okay, to sum up, queer coding is about queer identities and subcultures, is about stereotypes, and is about individual characters. You can have multiple queer-coded characters in the same work, like the leads of Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, who were based on a real-life couple, but the coding itself attaches to specific characters one by one. The second type of subtext is slashy subtext. Slash is a term for fanfiction about male characters involved sexually and/or romantically. The term comes from Star Trek fandom and the virgule punctuation used to write the pairing name KS in old zines. Slash fandom has always been overwhelmingly female, much like the later romance novel boom and like the boys' love genre in Japan. While many Slash fans are queer, only a few are cis gay men. Most of us were socialized female, and a lot of us grew up being exposed to romance novels, romantic comedies, and other forms of media aimed at women. Those genres tend to take an approach to romance where two halves of a whole come together. They have a meet-cute. They don't get along but are forced to work together by circumstance. They develop a grudging respect and then a friendship. External forces get in the way and they are separated emotionally and physically, but they rush back to each other, reuniting at the end. I am speaking, of course, of the buddy movie. Seriously, think about it. Buddy movies and epic male friendships like Kirk and Spock's take the same basic shape as a rom-com plot. Some of these are more aware of their subtext than others. Here's a summary of the two most common romance plots in mainstream Western media. 1. Two people who think they're fine but are secretly lonely find their other half, their partner, and equal. Examples include romance novels and rom-coms. 2. A guy goes on a quest to prove he's the only one worthy of the MacGuffin. Yes, that's a euphemism. Examples include every movie for dudes with a male lead and a female love interest. This is an oversimplification, but it applies to most typical love stories. Big media assumes that men are looking for a hottie who will validate them, while women are looking for a partner who will respect them. Maybe that's selling men short. I hope it is. But the fact is that the shape of romance narratives aimed at men tends to be about proving worth and about a strict division between protagonist and love interest. A buddy movie, from a mainstream male-oriented media perspective, is a story about a friendship. From a female-oriented media perspective, it's a romance.
When you got it, flown it.
This isn't just about straightness either. When I've read thrillers and mystery novels by gay men, they tend to follow the same pattern. There's a clear protagonist and a clear love interest who is mainly there to be hot and to provide the hero with a reward. He may be a fun character in his own right, and not totally unidimensional, but he's not really a partner. Okay, to sum up, slashy subtext is not about queer identity or culture, is about romance tropes, and is about the relationship between characters. I think that a lot of showrunners and writers who get accused of queerbaiting are looking at things from a male-oriented media perspective. For queer subtext, they're looking for queer coding, i.e. a character who exhibits blatant queer markers. If two characters of the same sex are openly gay when they're introduced on the show, then maybe they can be assumed to be a future couple, but most other good chemistry is just part of a buddy plot. In other words, a friendship plot. The people doing the accusing are very often from a fanworks fandom type community. To this group, structural similarity to a rom-com is in and of itself subtext. A strong buddy relationship is inherently romantic and a source of queer subtext. It doesn't matter whether the characters exhibit any overtly queer traits. If they're showing up in one of these plots, then they're being foreshadowed as a future pairing. When this foreshadowing does not pay off, this audience is pissed, and frankly, so am I. But I don't think that most of these shows are doing it on purpose. It's simply a mismatch of genre knowledge and expectations. Does this mean that I give all these shows a pass? Not at all. Because... Part 3. Heteronormativity is a hell of a drug. If you get a long-running procedural show with a male and female lead, even if its creator spends all of first season talking about how they are just friends, we all know.
What I'm saying is, and this is not a come on in any way, shape, or form, is that men and women can't be friends because the sex part always gets in the way.
Me too, Sally. Me too. Bones, Castle, Remington Steele, Moonlighting, they milk the will they won't they for as many seasons as possible, but you know that eventually they will.
He was a boy, she was a girl. Can I make it any more obvious?
Part of the mismatch of expectations is that the audience crying queerbaiting is one that sees queer people as normal. And if you spend most of your time reading fanfic, we're just as likely to be the protagonist as a straight person is. I noticed a lot of straight fans being horrified when a masculine, not gay-coded lead turned out to sleep with men on shows like Black Sails, Penny Dreadful, or Spartacus. In their minds, that should have been telegraphed from the first moment. But that's not what the experience of actually being queer is like. People assume I'm straight all the time, even people I've known for multiple years. We don't have one specific gender presentation, and we're not all easy to spot instantly. So, for the audience like us, this assumption that TV characters are straight until proven otherwise is absurd. There's not really any functional difference between Mulder and Scully sharing a room, and Jane and Maura doing so. Between Hutch rushing to Starsky's side, and Bones rushing to Booth's. I would like for my own community to stop assuming that big media producers understand us already and start explaining our preferred genre conventions clearly. I'd like for us to stop holding out hope that shows like Sherlock or Supernatural will go how we want and move on to media that does cater to us. But I would also like for big media producers and other viewers to stop acting like we're insane. The subtext we like and pick up on is real. It just might be a different type from what you pay attention to.